Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's topic is Ayurvedic Yoga for Birth Process Support. Donna Papania is a nationally recognized and renowned Ayurvedic practitioner, educator, and yoga instructor for 20 years. She holds a master's degree in nutrition, bachelor's degrees in nutrition and exercise science, is certified yoga therapist, and is a certified Reiki master and Ayurvedic energy point therapist. Donna spent 10 years in the desert of New Mexico studying with and working for Dr. Vasant Lad, where she assisted Dr. Lad in the Pancha Karma cleansing department as his assistant consultant and therapist. She taught Ayurvedic Diet and Lifestyle classes at the Ayurvedic Institute and served as the head of the Ayuryoga department. She's a mama to 3, a beach lover, and is fond of Ram Dass' way of thinking. For more information, check out her website at Ayuryogi.net or on Facebook at Thrive Ayurvedic Wellness. Hi, Donna. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
So we were talking briefly earlier how our topic today is focused on Ayurvedic yoga, and we're going to learn all what that means, and then also how we can, utilize this knowledge during pregnancy and the postpartum period. And I think it's fascinating because I certainly am familiar with yoga, and I'm a little bit familiar with Ayurveda, but certainly I've never heard of the two combined together. So this is exciting for me to learn something new today.
Yeah, it's honestly traditionally how yoga therapy was practiced, was bringing the Ayurvedic lens into your practice of asana and pranayama, so the postures and the breathing. So anytime a person needed yoga therapy, which is what we need at any point where something's a little off from our normal, then traditionally it was practiced in an Ayurvedic way. So this is really the foundation of yoga therapy, which is a really hot topic these days. It's being integrated into lots of levels of practice of medicine. And so to bring this topic to you guys today is really exciting for me, because the more that we understand how to blend them together, then the better off we all are.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean, obviously this can be applied for to people at any stage, children, men, women. It's not just obviously pregnancy related, but it sounds like if there's some sort of perhaps stressor that's creating an imbalance, then this is a good way to help get the body back into balance.
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly the thought with Ayurvedic yoga, is that it's used to bring the body back to its individual balance point. And for someone who is already balanced, it keeps them there. And so it's really a practice for everyone.
Wow. I mean, it sounds so much like the chiropractic philosophy. I love it. So this is going to be interesting. So let's talk about, if you want to just go through the 5 elements and kind of give us a little Ayurveda 101 so we understand what it is and how it works.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. So it's a little hard because I'm a very visual type of person. So typically I have, lots of pictures that I'd be drawing in front of you. But so if you could imagine that there are 5 elements that everything in the universe is comprised of, and maybe just kind of envision them at the top of a piece of a paper, and we'll build this image together. And so the 5 elements are space, air, fire, water, and earth. And they exist kind of on a spectrum from subtle to more dense. And so, of course, space being the most subtle and earth being the most dense. And I think that a lot of people have heard of the doshas of Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But what's important to understand is that those are just labels for combinations of the elements. So if you've got space and air that you're combining together, then that is what we're calling vata. And so anything that behaves in a way that space and air would behave together is what vata is. And we've even defined what those behaviors will look like. So anything that's mobile, moving around, anything that's subtle or rough or cold or clear or light or dry will be the behaviors of vata. So these are the qualities of vata. And so then if we combine two of the other elements together, fire and water, this is what we call pitta dosha. And it has the qualities or the behaviors of also being mobile, but this one's hot because it's got that fire element. It's liquid because it's got the water element. It's sharp and it's also oily. And then lastly, if you think about water and earth combining together, this is what we call kapha. And its behaviors are slowness and heaviness, coldness, oiliness, smoothness, density, softness, and stability. So each of the doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, are a combination of two elements and have these certain behaviors. Does it make sense so far?
So far, so good.
Okay. And so when we're thinking about people, we have to remember that everything and everyone is creative of all five elements. So all people have all three doshas inside of them, but we're individual. And so there's going to be a different proportion of each dosha within each person. And so this is how we get our constitution. And so, someone could have a predominance of vata dosha, and then secondarily pitta, and then a little bit of kapha. And so then they would be vata predominant, pitta second, kapha last. And so that person would present with mostly vata type of qualities. And so you can have any combination of the doshas in order to get your constitution. And so that is determined at conception. And so that's something that almost invariably never changes. I was taught by my teacher, Dr. Lad, that he'd seen it change one time in his long career, and it was extreme trauma that changed someone's original constitution.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can pretty much say it just doesn't change.
Is this considered a genetic?
Well, so in a way, yes. Genetic would be a layer to it because you're going to inherit certain tendencies from your parents. And so constitutionally, you may tend to be alike. Ayurveda is interesting because it always, the foundation of Ayurveda is the same as the foundation of yoga, which is to purify us so that we can see our spirituality. And so honestly, we would say in Ayurveda that it is genetic, but it's largely karmic. And so the soul comes in with a certain agenda and it creates what it needs in the body and in the energy and in the mind so that it can fulfill that agenda.
That's fascinating.
It's deep, man.
I love it. So it makes sense, like the physical body that our soul essentially chooses for this lifetime is going to serve us at a certain level, right? There's things that our bodies can offer to, like you said, get our purpose or agenda completed.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So, certainly, trauma you mentioned would throw off some imbalance, which makes sense, but I'm assuming chemical stressors like diet is impactful, physical stressors, emotional stressors.
Absolutely. Yes. Anything in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment that is not compatible with our constitution can throw us off of balance. And so it's important to know your constitution so that you can see your own tendencies and how you tend to go out of balance.
All right, cool. So then tell me how you incorporate that into yoga with movement and breath.
Okay, so we've been talking about the constitutions, your predominance of Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, and so that's one layer of understanding who you are as a being. And then we just kind of touched on this, that we also need to understand how we've gone out of balance. And so that's really where we apply any of the medicine of Ayurveda, whether we're working with herbs or food or cleansing, any modality that you want to work with, or yoga, as we're going to be talking about in depth. You work with how you're, I always say, out of whack. However you're out of whack, that's where you work. So you have to understand not only your constitution, but how you've deviated from that. And so once you understand how you've deviated from that, you apply the theory that we call in Ayurveda, like increases like, and opposites balance. In Sanskrit, it's sarvada sarvabhavanam samanyam vriddhi karanam. So like increases like, and opposites balance. So if you're doing things in your day-to-day that are accumulating too much of one certain dosha, then that dosha will hit a tipping point and become what we call just out of whack. Just it's become in excess. And so then we need to look at that dosha and apply the opposite qualities in order to create balance. And so I kind of read through the qualities quickly there at the beginning, but when I say the qualities, we're talking about the behaviors of, say, Vata first. So Vata behaves, like we said, it's very mobile, it's clear, it's subtle, it's rough, it's cold, it's light, and it's dry. So if Vata in someone's body is too high, then we can get even more finesse with it and say, okay, which qualities am I seeing being elevated in this Vata imbalance? And so if I can see that someone has too much mobility, it means they're moving a lot, they're moving quickly, their mind is racing, then I can take the opposite of that, which is stability, and try to create that for that person.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Right? That's an interesting statement. I know it's to say that it makes a lot of sense, but it does. And I hear that so much. Like once I explain how this works, I just so often hear, wow, that makes so much sense. Because it's so reasonable. It's so sensical, and yet somehow it's so profound.
Right. Oh, that's great. It seems very logical. Yeah. Like excess is excess, and you have to, how do you change something that's in excess? I mean, I guess some people might say, you would remove the excess, right? And there's probably part of that, but you can also bring in another element to create that balance. I think it's also really important to understand that we need all 5 elements and that they're all important, right? There's not like a good element or a bad element here.
Right, exactly. And then also to understand that you need to understand not only what your constitution is that you were born with, but how you go out of balance. Because like I said, that's really where you focus your work at.
As a functional medicine practitioner, that sounds like to me the root cause of dis-ease, right? Is where you're going out of balance.
Yeah. Yes. Ayurveda totally agrees.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just like foundational once again. Instead of masking symptoms, you're really identifying the root cause of what's causing those symptoms so that your body can heal. Cool. So give us an example of someone who is out of whack and how they identify, the cause and how they restore it.
Okay. So, there are tendencies for each dosha when they're out of whack. And so, it would take assessing a person to really fine tune where they're at. But in general, when vata is out of whack, kind of a broad idea is there's just a feeling of not being grounded for that person. And so they also tend to move a lot, tapping fingers, even multitasking. Constipation is a thing when vata is high. There's that dry quality of vata. In an extreme vata case, osteoporosis, because we're talking about an excess of the space elements. There's too much space in the bone. On a mental level, you'd see excessive worry, anxiety, high anxiety, fear, anything that's kind of a high wired nervous system, just overload type of thing is vata gone out of whack. So those are kind of dry skin. I don't know if I said that. That one stands out to me right now. A lot of people with that. And then for pitta, we tend to see more fire-based things. So a fever would be pitta out of whack, a rash, any kind of redness or inflammation on the skin. So like acne would even be a type of thing. Those hot emotions like anger or hatred or jealousy, that heat in the mind. That's also pitta because of that fire element, that hot burning.
Inflammation. Yeah.
Yes. Any kind of, even a low grade general inflammation that's too much fire in the body. And so that's definitely a pitta thing. And then kapha, because of its qualities, tends to present as excess. And so it could be overgrowth in any way. It could be mucus that's accumulated in excess, could be obesity, an accumulation of fat, a tumor, which is an overgrowth, is also a kapha thing. And then the heavy types of emotions, so depression, attachment, like hoarding, the accumulation of excess. That so there's that heaviness with the earth and the water with kapha. So those are kind of generalizations on how the doshas go out of whack on the physical and the mental level. And there's all sorts of variations, but those are some easy generalizations.
Okay. So for example, if there's a woman who's recently given birth, you had mentioned that the vata is the dosha that tends to be most out of balance. Can you kind of go into more detail of why that's linked to postpartum and how a woman can heal from that?
Yes. So it's also true that the doshas have a home in the body. And so this is another layer of how we can integrate our yoga into the Ayurveda is when you get into understanding the energetic body and you're looking at the chakras. Each chakra, so we use the 7 chakra system in Ayurveda, and each one of the first 5 are associated with an element. And it's the exact same elements that we use in Ayurveda because they come from the same philosophical system. And so the root chakra, the base, is associated with earth element. And then the second chakra is water. The third is fire. The fourth is air. And the fifth is space. And so when we're talking about the postpartum period, there's a literal space now where the earth element is. So we've given birth, and we've gotten used to the fact that for 9 or so months, there's been a weight. There's been a human inside of us. I'm a mom of 3, so I'm reliving this as I'm speaking it. And so when you give birth, all of a sudden there's a lightness that comes into the body, and that's the space element is now occupying where the earth element wants to live. And so that throws the body into a state of high vata. And this is almost, I hate to blanket statement anything because there's always exceptions, but almost invariably, this is what's going to happen because just of the birthing process. And so there's a lot of attention given in the postpartum period in Ayurveda to balancing vata, just because of location. So I do want to mention, although this is not my forte at all, but would be worth anyone who's listening looking into, because it's incredibly powerful. There's actually a 40-day postpartum period in Ayurveda where there's a 40-day routine that you can follow. And I didn't follow it with my first child, but I followed it with my second too. And it is incredibly powerful for balancing vata. There's a lot in Ayurveda, we love oil. So this postpartum protocol, there's a lot of oil on the body, taking oil by mouth, taking certain herbs, and being very, very careful with digestion, because digestion tends to go off after you give birth as well. And so it's a really incredible protocol that I just want to put out there. Like I said, I can't really speak to it other than just to say that when I did it, it was awesome. And so that's something to look into if that sounds interesting to you. And then part of that process is my forte, and it's the yoga practice. And so, like I mentioned, it's going to be vata, an excess of space and air that we're working with. And so when we're working with vata dosha through movement and through breath, we're going to be focusing on the pelvis, the hips, and the legs. Because as I mentioned earlier, when vata is high, there is a general sense of just not being grounded. And so Ayurveda is, as we said, very sensical, yet very profound. But so we just need to reestablish our connection to the earth. And so we're going to use movements that open the pelvis or strengthen the pelvis and reestablish that connection down the legs to the feet and to the literal earth.
Right, to reground that woman.
Yes, to reground. How that's done will vary from person to person, but that's kind of the broad stroke there. That's what we're focusing on. And so, like for me, when I had my kids, I had already been doing yoga for, 15 years or so. And so it wasn't new to me. So I was able to do some more movement, I think, than may be appropriate for everyone. Ayurveda is very individualized. And so you kind of have to be respectful of your constitution. And so my personal constitution and my knowledge base allowed me to do some bigger movements. I was fine getting up and standing and doing some gentle pelvic tilts and just stretching the backs of my legs to get the legs to open up and things like this. Whereas I know that there have been a couple of women that I've worked with in the postpartum period where they didn't want to get out of the bed, and that was fine. And so we just worked as much as we could, and still in those general areas, in the hips and the pelvic floor and down the legs. And so as far as working the physical body, when we're working on Vata, that's where we're working.
So this is so interesting. It sounds like there's really not like an Ayurvedic yoga class that you could go to with a group, right? Because it is so individualized. It's just like a one-on-one session type of thing.
Yeah, that's how I work, because as I mentioned, this is honestly where yoga therapy came from, is bringing in Ayurveda and looking through the lens of Ayurveda and then creating yoga practice around that. So it really is individualized. And when I work one-on-one.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's custom.
Yes, custom. I love that.
And, it's so funny as you were talking about a woman giving birth, and I thought back to my birth 3 years ago. It is like you go from having, a fairly sizable person inside of you at the end of the pregnancy, right? A 6, 7, 8 pound baby, whatever size it is, plus all the, placenta and whatnot. And then all of a sudden it's out. And it is like almost like this vacuum, right? It's like you push this baby out, you push out this placenta, and now there is a bunch of space inside. Your uterus is still huge. It's all like stretched out all the way up to your sternum, but yet there's nothing inside anymore, and it takes a little while for that to shrink back down to its pre-pregnancy size. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just basically summed it up. There's excess space. And so that in and of itself is high Vata. And how quickly, we recover from a high Vata state depends on our constitution and our practices after we give birth.
And, you mentioned those 40 days. That's through so many cultures of a woman needing that time to really recover and be like supported and not like, just to really rest and heal. Like I think sometimes we forget how much our bodies go through from the pregnancy and the birth. And there's almost this like cultural expectation to just bounce right back, and, it's not optimal if we don't give ourselves that time to heal.
Totally. Yeah. I lived it. It's important.
Yeah. So you mentioned yoga moves are part of that. So if there's the high Vata, you want to do more grounding type yoga postures. And then there's the breath component too, you mentioned.
Yeah. So I thought we could just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you up for that?
I am, please.
So this is just kind of a basic little breathing technique that you can apply when you're standing or lying down or even seated. As you're learning it, it might be more difficult with bent legs, but it's really super easy. And I always tell people that, this is something you can do when you're waiting in line at the grocery store or whatever, because no one's going to know what you're doing. And so I'm just going to take us through it for a few breaths and let you get the experience of it. And then we can talk about it. But so at first, just breathe without any need to change the breath. Just turn your attention to your breath.
Ideally without a mask on, right? I had to say it.
And then use your mind's eye to watch the breath and trace it as it goes in through your nose, goes down the back of your throat, and then just use your mind to take your inhalation all the way down into your pelvic bowl and let your inhalation fill the pelvis, and then just exhale out naturally. And just practice that a few times. And you can, envision a color to the breath or a light to the breath, if that's helpful, or just feel the sensations. We all connect to this type of subtle work in different ways. So just get that wired in. And then once that feels natural, use your exhalation to take the breath down the legs and out the feet. So your inhalation is going down to fill the pelvic bowl, and then your exhalation goes down the legs and out the feet. Take a couple more breaths, just keeping that visualization going. And then you can drop the visualization. Just let the breath breathe itself. And then just bring yourself back. So basically, what we're doing there is using our attention to create an energetic flow that moves downward. Because moving downward with your energy is grounding. And so that's the way that we manipulate the breath to interface with the energy body to help in balancing Vata dosha.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel more grounded with that exercise, and that was pretty short.
Yeah. I think, just a couple minutes, just a little taste there. But so that's a breathing exercise that if someone were not really feeling up for doing much in the postpartum period, they could just do the visualization and the breath, and that would be a way to create grounding. And then for those of us who in that postpartum period did feel like moving a little bit and kind of trying to get back into the body, then that can be layered onto whatever yoga poses you're doing.
Wow. And so some of the postpartum women you've worked with, can you talk to us about maybe what symptoms they were having and how they responded to this type of modality?
So I'm thinking of one woman that I'm working with currently whose Vata is quite high. And for
how many months postpartum is she?
Let's see. Phoebe just started eating solid food, so she's about 4 or 5,
6 months.
6 months. She's a little early on the solid, so I think she's more like 5 months. Yeah, and I've been working with her mom. I don't know, probably about 3 months now, and so as and she's a second time new mom, so she's juggling the first daughter with the second daughter, and in the beginning was trying to continue to work, and how we're all programmed to just be it all and do it all. So her Vata was definitely high because there was that, all of that mobility, all of that doing, and not enough of the groundedness. And so for her, I've seen changes in the way that she presents to me. It's no longer frantic. And what she reports to be true is, and is the most important thing to her, is that her mind is getting glimpses of clarity as opposed to just staying in fight or flight. She's getting glimpses of shifting out of that and just basically remembering who she is and was and will be. Yeah. It's, as you know, it's a big transition to become a mama. And so a lot of care has to be taken and a lot of gentleness and sweetness. And so applying the qualities of Ayurveda to the yoga practice, it can be the perfect medicine.
Wow, that is really fascinating. I know also you had mentioned in an email that you've worked with women with postpartum depression, constipation, fatigue, listlessness, some of these types of symptoms as well.
Yeah. So, in general, in Ayurveda, we look at whatever the symptom is, and we determine the quality of the doshas that it correlates to, and that's the entry point. So like for depression we consider to be heavy and slow and dense. And so that's a kapha type of emotion. And so we go back to that idea of like increases like and opposites balance. And we take the opposite qualities to that heaviness and that density, and we apply it to the yoga practice. And so this is where it requires a lot of fine tuning, because we're also trying to balance Vata dosha, which has a lot of opposites to it. And so with our example of depression, we're working more on the mental level with depression. And then with the postpartum period, the Vata is high on the physical level. So we're talking about that literal void that's now in the belly. And so we would work still with Vata dosha on the hips and the legs, but we might change the breathing. Rather than breathing down to get that heavy grounded effect, we might take the breath and breathe upward so that we can counterbalance those heavy qualities that are in the depression. And so what that could look like is, so we took the breath to the pelvic bowl on the inhalation, and then we exhaled it down to the earth. So if we want to get a little uplift in the spirit, we can inhale up through the legs to the heart, and then exhale upward out of the crown of the head. So we're bringing in these lighter qualities, but on a more subtle level. And so it's not going to disrupt the Vata that we're dealing with in the physical body, but it's going to help alleviate that kapha that we're experiencing on the mental level.
Right. So in that example, there's two doshas that are in excess.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So then you have to address both.
Mm-hmm. You have to address both.
So I know you also offer an online program, and is that only for teachers, yoga teachers who already have a certification, or can anyone take your teacher training for Ayurvedic yoga?
Anyone can take it. It's helpful to have a little bit of a background in yoga, but there is no need to have any kind of background at all in Ayurveda. I start at baseline and just build all of the knowledge.
Awesome. Kind of like what you did today. I think that's hugely helpful. I think, I was aware of the three doshas, but I certainly didn't know all of the detail. So it's good that you just, I guess for a lot of us Americans, we just don't know as much about Ayurvedic medicine as it would be nice to know. And this all originated from India, like thousands of years ago, correct?
Yes.
It's fascinating. Well, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with our audience?
Oh, just that I love you, and thank you for listening.
Wonderful, Donna. Well, thank you again for coming on and sharing your passion for Ayurveda and how it's combined with yoga and really supporting an out of whack body to heal and restore back to balance.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure for sure.
Wow, what an interesting episode. There was so much new knowledge that I've gained about Ayurveda and yoga and how to use the two together for optimal benefit. I'm really excited to hear how my listeners are able to apply some of the information they're learning from the podcast into your own personal life for the betterment. So please share it with me on Facebook, Instagram at Brayton Birth Method. And speaking of Brayton Birth Method, my online program is live. Anyone interested in planning on getting pregnant within the next year, please go check out at drlaurabrayton.com, the Brayton Birth Method, to find out more about how I can help support you and empower you during your preconception phase to prepare for improved fertility, healthier pregnancy, healthier baby, and an empowered birth experience.